Hey guys, what's up? Thank you so much for joining me in today's video where I will be reviewing and demoing these Snatural palettes from Scott Barnes. Now, Scott Barnes recently released 5 palettes. He's got 3 face palettes and then 2 eyeshadow palettes. The face palettes I have already reviewed and my video has been up on YouTube. So if you guys want to check that out, I will have it linked towards the end of today's video, but I will let you guys know right now I am wearing these palettes today and I love them very much. The quality is amazing. Just check out that video if you guys want to see swatches and how I used those palettes for the very first time. I do recommend it. The products are just so good. I had convinced myself to not get the eyeshadow palettes. He came out with one that's more of a natural palette and then another more colorful one. Now, Tara Lynn, and I mentioned this in the video where I demoed the face palettes, posted her review on these Snatural eyeshadow palettes, and the way she obsessed about it, I mean, I had to pick it up. I just had to. So I did, and I've used it a few times, and I feel like I've formulated a pretty solid opinion on this specific eyeshadow palette. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of it and I show you guys my demo, because I am wearing the eyeshadows right now, I do want to ask you to consider subscribing to my channel. I do like to post throughout the week, but I do not have a set schedule as this is more of a hobby of mine now. I do have a full-time job, so I film my videos whenever I do have a chance to do it, and when I have something I'm excited to show you guys and share with you all. So here we have the Snatural palette, and this also came in one of these little plastic bags. And this right here is just the sleeve. Here is the actual palette. And let me see, there you go. You can see like the other palettes, it has Scott Barnes in real big letters on the palette. So I actually really enjoy this palette. I think it looks pretty cool. Very simple, but again, we're talking about Scott Barnes, who is a makeup artist. Makeup artists, especially those that work behind scenes or like for celebrities that are always moving their makeup kits to one place or another, and sometimes they have a really sucky stations to work on. You don't want a palette that has too much to it when it comes to packaging. So I can see why he came out with packaging like this, being what his profession is. And again, I personally just don't mind this type of packaging. I think it's nice. As long as it's still kept simple, I'm good with it. So here on this side, if you lay it down, it says Snatural #1. So he'll probably be coming out with more shades. And inside we get a pretty decent mirror. The mirror here has a little message to remind us, be the most beautiful version of yourself. So that's a nice little saying. Now this palette comes with 20 different shades. This one is, because it's called, by the way, so this one's called the Snatural palette. No, the Snatural palette, yeah. I thought it was called the Snatural palette. Was I the only idiot that thought that? Because I didn't realize that until I actually got this in somehow. So the whole time I was saying it wrong. But anyway, this is definitely a more natural shade range here, and there is a lot of warmthness to it. Now the color payoff in here is so spot on. Pretty much what you see on the pads is what you will get once you apply it onto your eyes. They are very pigmented, but the formula is so nice and very easy to work with. They blend like a dream. Today I just purposely used a whole bunch of colors just to make sure and see how they work together, and they apply beautifully. They mix really well, not to the point where it gets muddy. I mean, they play with one another like a symphony. It is just amazing how any color you decide to mix with another, it's gonna just look so great. He created this palette so it can work on all skin tones. I obviously just have one skin tone. I feel like it works pretty well with me, but I do see how this is going to work, if not with all skin tones, definitely most. So I, for one, do think that this is a great palette. I think especially also if you are a makeup artist or working freelance makeup artist, this is something really great to have in your makeup kit. Now there are different formulas in here. There's matte, there's some metallics, but I feel like the metallics are a subtle metallic, also making it very wearable. Also good if you do bridal makeup, because it's nothing just too exaggerated. Everything that's, I don't want to say it's toned down where it's so muted that you kind of think it's blah. no, it's still where it's gonna look really pretty on the lid, but it's just not over the top, which for me, I think it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do like a real metallic or very shimmery eyeshadow, but overall, especially on a day-to-day, especially for like those timeless pictures that you want something that's just gonna look beautiful on you. You don't want just you don't want your look to be all about the eyeshadow. You want your whole look to just be nice. And I feel like a palette like this will absolutely help you do that. And I hope I'm like making sense with all of that. Now there is this one shadow here called Femme. This one has like those little tiny glitter particles all over it, but it's again one of those eyeshadows that once you start applying it onto your lids, those glitters are gone. I used it for today's look, and yeah, I was not able to see any glitter specks lingering around with this one shadow. I also ended up using Silver Screen. This one does have like those little, it's not glittery. I guess these are more like shimmery shades, like high shimmer. And they're real pretty because, again, these are those high shimmers that are, you can clearly see that I have shimmer on my lids, but it's again not over the top, something that's still more wearable. I would wear this any time of the day. I'm totally comfortable with it because it's nothing that's so dramatic. Of course, you can amp it up if you wet your brush, if you really build on those dark colors, the way that you mix or match things. We can always amp up a look with a palette like this, but it's still gonna be more on the wearable side than on that like too much side. I hope you know what I mean. Now, the mattes in here work really great. They all work really great. Honestly, everything in here works phenomenal. I do have a complaint though. And even the whole time that I've been here talking about this palette, I'm like getting a headache. The smell of this palette is ridiculous. Now, I have not heard anybody on YouTube talk about the scent that comes off of this palette, except that when I posted a comment on Tara Lynn's, I'm like all about Tara Lynn, by the way. When I posted a comment on her video when she was reviewing this palette, somebody replied to me mentioning that there is a smell to this palette. And immediately when I read that, I thought it's gonna be, if that is the case with my palette, it's gonna be the actual packaging or like the glue that they use to stick the, gosh, I can't think sometimes, to stick the pans onto the palette. And now that I have it with me, that is what I think it is. I don't think it's the actual shadows. I mean, would I be able to smell it? Is it the shadows? I don't know. I don't think it's the shadows. I actually think it's either the actual palette or the glitter, again, that they use to stick the pans on. Because my palette from KKW Beauty, the So Fire palette, has a similar scent as this, but this one's really strong. Like, I honestly was not able to use the mirror here to do my eye makeup because it's so strong. The first day I used it, I did, and I kind of felt like I couldn't get rid of that scent. And yeah, that's a big, I don't know, I'm like very, as much as I love this palette, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm a little bit set back because of it. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to leave it open maybe for a few days and see if that smell goes away. I really don't think it's the actual eyeshadows just because I don't see anything bad going on here. I feel like the way that they perform, everything seems fine. So I'm not necessarily concerned about it. It's just, I mean, I do not like the smell. But really that is the only drawback of this palette. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do some swatches. I'm gonna do, because there's so many shadows in here, we'll do the swatches by row. This first shade here is Angelic. And as you can probably see here, it's got a really strong pink iridescence to it. Then we have Saucy, Muted, then it's Brazen, and Laced. So here we have that first row. Next we have Retro, Woody, Vintage, Starlet, and then Risque. So here is row number 2. Then we've got Brick House, Siren, Foxy, then Hollywood, and Boudoir. This is row 3. Here we have Temptation, Silver Screen, Femme, Nightcap, and Sin. So this is the final row. Getting into the demo, I first mixed the shades Vintage and Risque, and I added this over my crease. So I kind of used it more as a transition shade, but I didn't want my transition to be too light of a color because I was first going to go into Vintage, but I felt like that was too close to my skin tone. So I wanted to add something with a little bit more depth to it. And once I really blended that in, which took about no time because these blend so well, I then went ahead and picked up a little bit more of Risque and just went a little bit more beneath it to start adding more depthness onto my crease. So I believe I mentioned earlier, I did add quite a few shades onto the crease because I wanted to see how these colors work together. And they work beautifully together. Now for my actual crease, I went ahead and picked up Foxy and Boudoir, and I blended this well into my crease, just doing that windshield wiping motion. Very easy shades to work with. I'm telling you guys, this is just phenomenal. Then I remembered I do have a few Scott Barnes brushes, but then I only remembered to use one. So this is the number 62, and I used this one to pick up a Brick House. Really nice, like red brown shade. Love it. So I used that into the crease, and I really liked what this color did with the look. At this point, I really contemplated just sticking with all matte shades, but I knew I had to play with some other formulas as well, so I kept it going. I then picked up the shade Femme, and I applied this on the outer portion of my lid. Again, this is that matte shade with the glitters on it, and at the end of it all, it just looks like it's a solid matte color. So I was just patting on this color because I did want to try to preserve some of those glitters, but it just did not happen. So then a color that I really like from this palette, which is, I don't know, like I look at it on the actual pan here and I'm not that like excited about it, but once I applied it onto my lid, I love it, and it's the shade Starlet. So I applied that on the inner portion of the lid, and it just pretty much met up with Femme. Really nice color. I could have left it alone there, but no, we wanted to play with some more shimmer here. So then I went in and picked up Silver Screen and patted that all over the lid. So I focused most of that color on like over Starlet, and then whatever was left on my brush, I kind of took it along the rest of the lid, and then I went up onto my crease just barely. And I love how Silver Screen looks over Starlet. I think it looks so pretty. This is the second time I mixed those two together. I don't know what it is about it. I just love it. I feel like it tones down the eye look a little bit, but it's still, it just gives me what I need and what I want. Now I'm sure if you were to wet this shade, you would get a lot more intensity out of it. Now for the bottom lash line, I mixed the shades Risque and Boudoir, and then I went over it with Silver Screen. Now this time around, I did wet my brush when I used Silver Screen because I was a little afraid of fallout. So I was very careful when I was placing that under the lash line. I feel like if I would have applied it wet onto the lid, it definitely would have intensified it after doing that on my bottom lash line. But again, I'm just not really about that life. And then for the inner corner, I, for some reason, thought it would be a genius idea to pick up Angelic, and that is just super pink. Like the iridescence of that is quite insane. I think it would look really pretty if my eye look was focused on different tones, but with the color that I had, it was just way too much. So then I ended up picking up some of Laced, and then I applied that over. Then whatever was left on my brush, I went ahead and applied on my brow bone, and this is the look I got. Actually, I didn't film it because I kind of hadn't really thought about it, but with a small definer flat brush, I picked up the shade Sin, this black shade, and just very barely went over my lash line with it just to define the eyes a little bit more. But yeah, that's it. Again, I feel like I made the look. I used all these colors, again, just to kind of test out the palette a little bit more because I had played with it, but I was just keeping it more simple in previous looks that I created with this palette. But again, I wanted to see like, were they gonna muddy up? How was it gonna look? And these colors just work so, so great together. So overall, I think this palette is amazing. If it wasn't for that stink, I would honestly rate this a 10 out of 10. Why? Because what else do I need from this palette? I don't need anything else. That's not to say that I don't need any other palette in my life, because that is not at all what I'm trying to tell you guys here. I'm just saying, like, for a palette like this and for what it's supposed to do, like, in all reality, what other color would I need in here? I just think this is perfect as it is. I love how this is even put together. Everything about it I think is great. I know I said angelic really surprised me in this palette, and it kind of does. I think it gives more of a variety. You can create so many different looks with this palette, and I think it would be staple looks for so many people. You can do so much with it and still stay like with a very wearable look. Again, yes, you can obviously amp it up and do more with it, but overall, it's my type of palette. I feel like the smell of this is like in my throat even now. Like, I'm just inhaling it. I need to close this. I really cannot stand it. So let me know, guys, if you have this palette, does yours have that stink to it too? Because, okay, I'm gonna close it right now because I'm sitting here, but before I leave this room, I'm gonna open it back up and hopefully that smell goes away. It definitely is a huge con for me. Obviously, I don't know if it's just my palette, just a few palettes that went out like that. I'm not trying to like bring down the brand or anything. Like I said, it could just be the packaging. In all honesty, that is what I think it is, but it's still not very pleasant. So the palette itself is great. The colors themselves are great. They perform how you want eyeshadows to perform. I think this is definitely user friendly. There isn't a lot of fallout. I'm not sure if I mentioned that at all, but yeah, I got like almost no fallout. I think when I got a little bit was when I used the shade Silver Screen, the one that has like the most sparkles to it, like the more, I don't know if it's glitter necessarily, but like that type of formula. I got a little bit, yeah, and I see a little bit of fallout with that, but nothing else. Honestly, I don't think not once when I played with the matte shadows that I can remember I had fallout. So that's obviously a huge plus. And yeah, overall, very happy with it. Hopefully the smell goes away. I will let you guys know in a future video what happens with that. Hopefully it just goes away. Just go away, you'll stay. Alright guys, that's it as far as today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed my review. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And while you're there, do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Until next time.